Walk into this room, the room gets very, very heavy. It's like sandbags on your shoulders or weights on your shoulders. And it's almost like the room itself is pulling you down. You start to sink. Your legs, your knees start to bend downward like you're being pushed or weights are on your shoulders. What's up, guys? Josh here. So last night I was invited to go on a tour to the Baraboo Inn in Wisconsin. Mad shout out and big thanks to Mad City Ghostbusters, owned by my buddy Scott Rorick. Look them up on Facebook. So it's Mad City Ghostbusters on Facebook. They do paranormal checkings and it's a lot of exciting stuff. Anyways, a really quick background or backstory on Baraboo Inn in Wisconsin. So it is known to be one of the most haunted locations, if not Wisconsin, in the entire nation, in the United States. And when you walk into this place, it is extremely haunted, or it is loaded with activity. There's a lot of energies that walk in. So the moment you walk in, and the moment you actually walk past the bar and find yourself a seat, you are definitely surrounded by activity. You definitely see affirmations, you see entities, you see ghosts. For the most part, they're in this location that you're seeing in the video right here. They're pretty chill. Everything is pretty chill, maybe friendly, nothing to be alarmed about. And I had a great opportunity to do a really quick Q&A with a couple of ladies that are in this location, and they told some stories about some ghostly activities, ghosts, objects moving on their own, electronics working on their own, which I've definitely experienced. I should definitely do a video on that, and how your electronic, like your phone, your car stereo, maybe your TVs, maybe your lights in your home, how they all kind of like turn off and on by themselves, or they just kind of like, change the song, they flicker, anything of that sort. Definitely need to do a video on that, because that happens to me at least once or twice a week. But anyway, the ladies were telling some stories, some really great stories about how those activities will happen at this location. I'm going to post another video with their full, like almost like, questions and Q&A. They tell some great stories, so it's really cool to check out. So while I was actually grabbing my seat and the ladies were talking and stuff like that, I stopped and I asked, hey, is there a gentleman, because this place definitely has a mafia history as well. Al Capone definitely comes to mind, so there's definitely Al Capone activity here. The prohibition, times back in the 1930s, and there was a gentleman right next to me. He came right next to me. He was wearing a kind of a brownish sand color fedora, heavyset trench coat. The trench coat was about the same color. It could have been beige or a brown sandy like color. Once again, kind of a medium-sized heavyset guy. Wasn't menacing. He was just walking about. He never seen me there before, so this entity is definitely a regular at this location. He's just kind of looking at me and seeing like, hey, who's this guy? And I kind of started observing him. I was looking at him. I was describing him. I described him. So not until we actually go upstairs. Now, when we go upstairs, we are doing a little bit of ghostly activity. As we're moving upstairs, I definitely start to see some ladies. Now, the upstairs location on this has a burlesque history. All right, so let's just call it friendly ladies, and a lot of activity upstairs would happen. And I definitely started to get some images of some ladies that were wearing some, revealing outfits and stuff like that. And I definitely had one person come in. Actually, I had two ladies come in. One who looked like a burlesque type, individual, and then I had somebody else wearing a hood. Now, originally, I took her as a nun, and I kept asking, is there a history of a nun at this location? And Scott and a few others said, no, there's no nuns here. And it's like, okay, I think I'm seeing a nun. The location also has a history of children being there as well, because it was a burlesque. And now, when I walk into this room right here, this room is interesting. So right at the bat, I get two experiences. I get a woman who, once again, she looked like someone out of the 1920s or 30s, like an actress out of the 1920s and 30s. She sees me walk in. She's in front of the mirror, and she is combing her hair like this. And if I remember correctly, she had very dark hair, and her dress would flip flop with in color. So one minute it would be white, the next minute it would be black. She also looked like something more of a black and white like image. I heard a really good hint from somebody that said that maybe she was trying to emulate another actress. Maybe she was trying to get inspiration how to look from a picture that she liked. So that's definitely possible. But she looked very black and white. Her dress with... The other thing about this location, or this room, is the location got very, very heavy. Very heavy. So, the moment you walk in, your shoulders start to sink. It's almost like someone's coming over and pushing you down. Or it's like, if you ever put sandbags in your shoulder, for those of you who work out, if you ever do squats and you have weights on your shoulders, like a bar and weights, and you're going down. And it's very heavy on your shoulders and your knees. Not voluntarily, start to bend. They start to go down. And you're going downward. Someone's pushing you down. There's a lot of pressure on you. This was just on me. Nobody else was experiencing this. It was just me that was getting this pressure on me. It was very interesting. Nobody could really explain why I was feeling this pressure. So I was seeing it also has a history of children being there as well, because it was a burlesque and there was a lot of, we're going to use the word wedlock. A lot of woodlock-like activity at this location, and kids would end up being here. And then I asked, well, who took care of the kids? And I kept seeing this nun. It's like, is there a nanny here? And none the wiser. Later on, found out that this nun wasn't really a nun. It was probably another burlesque woman, but she would wear some kind of cover over her head from the 1930s, maybe 1920s, 1930s, and she would have a covering on her head that was kind of like a hood of some kind, maybe for the style. So she wasn't really a nun. I took her as a nun. I was seeing a nun, though. I was seeing someone who was very stern looking and stuff like that. But maybe it wasn't a nun. It could have been just another burlesque woman who maybe just wore a cover over her head. Now, this next activity was pretty interesting. I've never done this before, so this is something that Scott showed me last night. It's an activity called scrying. So take the word crying, like you're crying, but put an S in the front, scrying. So what you do with scrying is you sit in a chair. You get very relaxed, like relax your entire body. Take a deep breath or two if you need to. Be very relaxed, very calm, very chill. And you just stare in the mirror. And what you do is you stare in the mirror for a couple of moments and you wait for the ghostly entity to present themselves in the mirror. And it's right in front of you. And I had two. Scott acknowledged this, but I had the hooded woman in the background. And then I had a gentleman show up who looked a lot like Charlie Chaplin. And, so I had a gentleman right in front of my face. And then I had the woman right behind me. So next up is when we go into the basement. And as mentioned before, the Baraboo Inn has a very burlesque-like history. And with a lot of things happening out of wedlock. We're just going to use those words, keep it very PG for social media. That being said, it is a lot of activity in the basement that has to do with, let's say, mafia activity, burlesque activity. There was, things that have to do with maybe discipline and questions, Q&A, and there was also things where, it's very emotional. You could try to put the pieces of the puzzle together yourself. What happens in those times. There was no, sexual protection back in those days and stuff like that. So there was a lot of stuff that would happen in the basement with a lot of different activities. When we go down there, the emotions are pretty heavy for other people. They are getting very emotional. Now, this is where I find very interesting. Before, in the other room, the room would get very heavy, where my shoulders are being pushed down. I'm seeing the affirmation across the room. in this one location, the same thing was happening. I'm feeling a high vibration, very anxiety-like feeling, and then I'm feeling my shoulders being pushed again. Now there were like 2 or 3 other ladies that were with us in this tour. They're getting very emotional, where they start crying, and they say, "I can't stay in this spot. I have to leave. I have to move." They're getting very emotional and start crying, and I'm not feeling the emotions to want to start crying, but I can't help but relate the pressure on my shoulders to relate to the emotions they're feeling. And so it's like there's this pressure in here. There's this pressure. Now, granted, when I go into the visual and try to see what was going on, I did see violence. I did see. Now, granted, they don't recognize this, but this is what I was getting. I was getting chains. I was getting shackles. There's even talks about people. It has to do with the mafia, with violence down there. And I was getting people who were wearing not just the trench coats and the hats, but I'm also getting people with suspenders and hats, different types of hats and so forth. So I was definitely getting that in these locations here. And to make this way more emotional, in the other part of the location, there are some areas where the spirits kind of considered to be, I guess, forbidden. But while they were doing which I thought was kind of neat, it was like a blackjack or poker game with the spirits with an device, a voice box, talking to the spirits while they were doing a poker game, which I thought was kind of neat. While they're doing the game, I can't help but look around and stuff like that, and I would definitely see a lot of activity. I would see kids, and I would see things that are not nice to see. Not good. And I did see some stuff that I probably won't talk about on here, but there's a lot of stuff you could definitely see in that basement. Not good stuff. Not good. So I could see why, eventually when you start walking down the road and these certain things, why certain people get really quickly emotional. I mean, I'm getting queasy just thinking about it now. Yeah, it's not good. Not good stuff. So you see that, but eventually we would leave the basement and we would head upstairs, and that's pretty much the tour in a nutshell. This place, I mean. Okay. As I'm talking about the basement, I'm trying to describe that stuff to you guys. I start getting emotional on some ah okay. So yeah, that basement is something else. Anyway, so the Baraboo Inn within Wisconsin is definitely extremely haunted. If you're very sensitive to energies, if you're definitely sensitive to spirits, mediumship, however you want to see it. Everyone's a little different with these abilities too. There's being empathic, psychic mediums, just seeing things. Sometimes you're not even aware. Hey, what are my gifts? What are my talents? Just this is definitely a great place to go to test out your abilities. Because I mean, if you're super sensitive to stuff, you'll see it. You'll right there in your face. But yeah, that was definitely my tour of the location. Definitely thank you again to Scott for inviting me. Once again, Mad City Ghostbusters. Check them out. They're on Facebook. I think Facebook is their only main page. And Baraboo Inn, you can easily just Google it if you like. Google all this stuff if need be. And then yeah, but thanks again, guys, for watching my videos. Appreciate it. All right, and readings coming up too.